John Ricard. Today we're going to be talking about the difference between using a hot light and a strobe when you're doing photography. So the first light we're going to look at here is a hot light. This is a pro photo light. It's called a pro tungsten. You see it's kind of small. And this is the entire light. There's a little on and off switch here on the floor. That stays on the floor, which is nice because you can turn it on with your foot if you leave this on the floor. And this is the entire light. We also have something different, which is called a monolight or a strobe. This is different. This is the entire light. There's no pack on the floor, and the power controls are here. And you'll notice when I push the button that this turns on, and although on the video this is going to look very bright, in reality it's not. This is about 20% of the brightness of the other light. And you don't really use that light to take a picture that you just saw. The light you use to take pictures is when you fire the light, like this. For this, and this is called a strobe, and it's different than using a hot light, and we're going to kind of talk about some of the differences between using the hot light versus the strobe. The number one difference when you're using a hot light versus a strobe is probably the amount of power that the hot light puts out. My ISO is set to 100, and I'm just going to take a reading of how much light is falling on her at ISO 100 from the hot light. And I'm reading a 4.0.8, so it's just about a 5.6. And you notice there's no power controls on the hot light. There's nothing I can do except take this picture at a shutter speed of 125 and the aperture of 5.6. Nothing else I can do. Can't get to an f8 because I can't raise the power on the light. And if I were to change my shutter speed, it's going to affect my aperture, of course. So if I go to 60, I can shoot it at f8. If I go to 250, I can shoot it at f4. But that's really the only control I have. I can't make this any brighter. So at its most powerful setting, at ISO 100, shutter speed of 125, I'm reading a 5.6 on the hot light. Can't do any more than that. So what we've done now is we've replaced the hot light with the strobe, and I want to show you the difference in the power output from the monolight. So I put the monolight on its lowest power. It's approximately the same distance from EV that it was before. So we fire our light, and at its lowest setting, it puts out a 5.6 at the lowest power. As I start to raise the power, now we're at f8, and I'm probably at 1/8 of the power of the light. So we're moving the light now to 1/8 power, 1/4 power, and I'm getting an f11. As I move it to 1/2 power, I'm getting an f16, and when I go to full power, I'm reading an f22. Far more light than the tungsten hot light puts out. And that's really the main difference, is that this puts out a lot of light. The hot light does not put out anywhere near as much light. And that has a big effect on what you're doing, because with this I can put different light modifiers on it. And if those light modifiers cause me to lose some of my light, it's not really a problem. I just turn up the power. With the hot light, if I was at 5.6 and I want to bounce it into an umbrella, I might be down to 2.8, or I might be down to f4. I might not have enough light to do what I need to do. For the first setup, we wanted to do something simple to show how you can use hot lights. And I'm going to show you one of the disadvantages, again, of using a hot light. So for our main light, we're using a beauty dish, which is here. It's a few feet away from her. And this will give us a certain quality of light that we like for her front. But the problem is, if we were to light her with just the beauty dish, she would kind of blend into this background behind her. We need something to separate her from the background. So to do that, we have two lights behind her, which I'm going to turn on. These are, again, the hot lights. I put a standard reflector here with a 40-degree grid spot, and we're going to put this behind her. And what this is going to do is give her some separation between her and the background, because it's going to put some light here on the outside of her, so that way she won't blend into the background. I'm going to put the opposite side on. Now, normally what we would need to do now is we would get a particular reading for her face. Let's say it was f8. For here, this edge here and this edge here, we would want that to be just a little bit brighter than her face. So we might want that to be 8.5 or 11. The problem is, when using the hot lights, because we don't have any power controls, we don't have a lot of flexibility. When I go to check this in the camera or on the light meter, if the rear lights are too bright as compared to this front light from the beauty dish, I don't have a lot of flexibility about what I can do to fix that. My only options really would be to move the beauty dish closer to make it brighter, or to back it up to make it darker, or I could take my rear lights and move them closer to make them brighter, or back them up to make them darker, or maybe put some diffusion material in front of them to make them darker. to balance off my lights. If I were using strobes instead, all I'd have to do is come turn the power up or turn the power down, and it's a much easier and quicker way to shoot. But right now we're going to do the best we can to get the shot lit for the way it is now with the hot lights. So I managed to move the lights around and I have it set up properly. And just so you know, what we did is we're at ISO 1000, which normally is not what I use in a studio because, again, the strobes are powerful enough that I can get down to an ISO 100 or 200. In this case, these lights aren't as powerful, so I'm at ISO 1000. But I'm shooting with the Nikon D3, which is very good at ISO 1000. So if I give her shots at ISO 1000, she's not going to complain. So my light in front, I'm getting a 250 and f4, and on her back I'm reading f8. So I have a lot more light coming from the back than from the front. But when I check it on my screen and on a laptop, it looks fine, and that's the way we're going to shoot. Right there, good. Small smile. Very gentle with the lips. Drop the right hand down. Good, like that. Now turn more to camera. Just like that. Now hold that. Part the lips a little bit. Right, that's it. Beautiful right there. Small smile. Good. Freeze right there. Hold a second. Now come flatter to me and do that same kind of step like this. Keep this off the shoulder a bit. Yeah, just little turns like that. Beautiful right there. So I've talked a couple of times about what's wrong with using hot lights, or don't really want to say wrong, but disadvantages to using hot lights. So another thing you should realize is that there are advantages to using hot lights. One of them is that if I go to position a light, in this case, I'm going to take a picture of Evie from her back like this, where we see her shoulder. I want to have a rim on this side of her from this light. My main light is a beauty dish here in front of her still. And what I want to do now is put a light for her hair on this side. If I'm using hot lights, it's very easy for me to position this light exactly where I want it to be. I can really see exactly what I'm getting if I'm aiming it here, or if I turn it a little bit one way or the other. It really lets me see what I'm going to get. What you see is what you get when you're using hot lights, and that's one of the advantages to using them. Unlike using strobes, where although you have a modeling light, you kind of feel like you're flying blind, because the modeling light is not what you're using to take the picture. You're using a flash tube to take the picture, and it's not exactly the same as the modeling light. We have Evie lit properly now. We have our magnum dish in the front. We have our two side or rear lights kissing her with some blue. And I'm going to show you now why you might choose to use hot lights. Because so far I've spent a lot of time talking about what are the difficulties with shooting the hot lights. But now I hope you're going to see one of the really nice things about shooting with hot lights as opposed to strobes. So you're not going to move your position, meaning you're going to stay seated in basically the same position, but it's all going to come down to the eyes and the lips and the head position. So you're going to just move little bits. I want you to go on a nice smooth flow as you go from pose to pose. Here we are. Very nice there. Let's see the hands in the shot now. Let me see the hands somewhere on the knee. Beautiful right there. Stay there. Ready? Go. Just keep flowing each time. Good. Beautiful. Freeze right there for a minute. Freeze. Chin up just a little bit. Beautiful. Like that. Now start working the lips again. Beautiful right there. Keep changing the head position a little bit. Good. Small smile there. Open the lips now. Perfect. Beautiful. Beautiful right there. Good. That concludes our presentation about using the hot lights. And I hope you picked up one of the nicest things about using hot lights, and that's the fact that you can develop a different rapport with the model using the hot light than you do with the strobe. When you're using the strobe, sometimes what happens is you start working off of a particular rhythm where each time I shoot, she changes her pose, and what starts to happen sometimes is we get on a rhythm like this, where every 2 seconds I push the button, and every 2 seconds she changes her pose. That's not always a good thing. It kind of becomes like rote at that point, and it's not very spontaneous or real, because she follows the rhythm of the light, and I start following the rhythm of the light, But if you notice when you're shooting with the hot light, sometimes you can kind of create a different mood. And normally I'd have music playing, but in this case we didn't. But you can create a somewhat different mood where there is no timing now. I can push the button at any time. She can pose at any time. It just kind of gives you a different feel than you get from shooting a strobe. So it's something you might look into. There's advantages and disadvantages to any light or any light modifier, and that applies to the hot lights as well, okay?